here we have a situation where I'm fully aware that life comes to an end, that there is one sure thing in this life, and that's death. And I've come to the conclusion that there is no way that I can count on dying the way I would like to die. I'm going to die due to circumstances. And one of the things that I'm so frightened about is I may die voiceless and lifeless, and I don't want that. Today, with life support systems, you can stay alive till you're 90, but you're lying in bed with no life. What is the point? So I'm here to discuss the possibility of having your law firm look after my interests. And again, this is to be paid for as a service, so you have to make sure that everything is set up properly, clearly, and you become well, it's a burden to look after somebody else, but that's what you are going to be responsible for. And I want to make sure that everything is in order according to what my wishes are. And from there, I would like to make sure you're, talking to whoever I have left as a family, letting them know that you're the decision makers and they're out of that loop, that you're the ones who are going to decide when the time comes to pull the plug and this guy is lying lifeless in bed with no chance of recovering. Please take it and run with that as a command. Please tell the doctors that this is what you have in writing as a wish. I don't want to stay in bed as a lifeless human being. That's the worst kind of an ending for me. So now, is the possibility of your firm being a firm that can handle this? I mean, it's a new domain. It's nothing that I've heard of before, but it's something that would give me great comfort.
Dying with dignity is something that really does need more attention by everyone. Let's face it, one day we're all going to die. But in many cases, we don't have any control over how we're going to die or how unpleasant it might be for us and for our family members. I can speak from personal experience, having been involved with many, many families that unfortunately didn't plan in advance. Something happened, and the relatives were burdened with the task of visiting someone in the hospital, in the nursing home, day after day after day. The poor guy was hooked up to a machine. He had no chance of recovery. He had a horrible quality of life, and the family just didn't know what to do. They'd never discussed his wishes. They didn't know what he wanted. They knew what they wanted, but they didn't have the proper paperwork in place to make sure that the wishes were carried out. So I implore you, I urge you, to please think about this and talk to your family members and make sure you sign the necessary paperwork to make sure that if something happens to you, that your wishes can be carried out, so that not only for your benefit, but for the benefit of your family, you're not hooked up to tubes and machines and wasting away, because that is no quality of life whatsoever.
Well, that's a good feeling, Bernie, that there is someone who would look after me and realize that there comes a time, no matter where, when, or how, there's a time to pull the plug with dignity and not linger in a voiceless, lifeless being. And Alexandra, I'm sure you've come across a lot of people that are trepidatious about death, and could you share that with me?
Yeah, we've had obviously a lot of clients come in and have the issues of dealing with, and eventually at the end dealing with death and putting in place all the necessary documents, which is extremely important. As early as this morning, I met with a client who took him about 3 years to execute his estate planning documents. And the relief that I had, knowing that we were able to help him and to put in place the importance of all his documents, and to know what his wishes are to his daughter with respect to his end-of-life treatment. So we were I was very happy at the end of the morning to know that he finally was able to put all his wishes in place.
Let me just add one thing, if I may, Alex. In many cases, the client actually knows what he or she wants. They know that
Correct.
they don't want to be hooked up to machines and tubes, and they don't want to be on ventilators. But in a lot of cases, they don't know who to pick to make that decision. It's uncomfortable talking to other family members about that. Let's face it, people like to talk about pleasant things, happy things, where are we going on vacation, what kind of car are we going to buy, what color are we going to paint the house. Those are fun, joyful occasions, birthdays, anniversaries, celebrations. But when you're talking about dying and what it's going to be like, nobody wants to broach that subject. So even though they may have an idea in their head of what they want to do, they fail to talk about it with the other people who they care about and who care about them, because it's just unpleasant. So we're hopeful that by offering this service to families in the New York metropolitan area, that we can ease some of the burden, because we're professionals, we're not emotionally involved, and we'll have the courage to do what you want, not what somebody else wants, a doctor or a hospital or a family member, but what you want. So you tell us what you want. We're not involved in it financially, other than to be compensated to serve as that role, but we're not a beneficiary of the will or the estate, so we have no other financial incentive to do anything other than what you want. Your wishes will be carried out, and I think what you'll find is a lot of the tension that exists among family members will no longer be there. We'll include them in the process, we'll make sure that they're consulted, and we'll make sure that we get, to the best extent possible, a consensus so that everybody's on board. But at the end of the day, we will honor your wishes. We've seen so many cases where, even where somebody did appoint somebody else in the family as a healthcare proxy, those wishes were not carried out the way the person would have wanted, because the brother or the sister or some other family member objected, and the person wasn't strong enough to carry out the wishes of the person who signed the document. So they had the best laid plans, they had beautiful documents, they were all bound up, they had a nice ribbon on them, and then the person lied in the nursing home bed for 6 weeks because the family couldn't agree. So why not take the time to make sure this is done right? You won't regret it, your family will appreciate it, and you'll be able to live a beautiful life and die with dignity.
Excellent, Bernie. Now, here's my fear, that I want to make sure that you don't get into trouble. So somehow you would have to make sure that you're indemnified in some way from any of the family coming to you and saying, hey, screw you, this is my father, I'll take care of it my way. It has to be clearly pointed out on paper that this is the rule and this is the last rule.
It'll be a completely legal arrangement. There'll be written documents which will absolve us of any responsibility for carrying out your wishes, so the family members will know that. We'll show that to them, so they'll see, look, this is what Dad signed when he was able to sign. This is what he wants, and they'll be able to come to grips with it. So we'll be empowered to make the decision that you want, because we'll be indemnified for any costs of defending any lawsuit or any infighting amongst the relatives that we get involved with. We'll have the power to make the decision because it'll be in the paperwork and it'll be what you want.